As you're joining us, I'd like to welcome you all here today. I am Nisha Bochwe, the Dean of the Hubert H. Humphrey School of Public Affairs, and it's an honor to be here virtually to bring this important event to you wherever you are. We are honored to have the editors and several contributors of the soon-to-be-released Tribal Administration Handbook. I just want to take a moment here to congratulate everyone involved in the creation of this handbook. This collection of narratives, a guide for Native nations in the United States, supports the work done within the Native nations, but also supports the work of the communities who engaged and work with tribes as well. For several years now, our school has worked to make it easier for Humphrey students to access tribal-related courses by some of the folks we'll hear from today, which are offered through the University of Minnesota, Duluth. I know our panel will talk more about the workshops and certificates available for students, and as they do, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to ask questions. I want to reiterate that we are committed to deepening our connections with UMD, our tribal nations, and our Native students. Our students can enter their professions better prepared to navigate tribal and state relations with the course offerings at the University of Minnesota Duluth and made available to our students. This relationship and continued engagement is incredibly important to me and our school, as we know these institutions are built on the traditional homelands of the Dakota and the Ojibwe, and scores of other Indigenous peoples who have walked on these lands from time immemorial. I know that words are not enough. We must ensure that our institution provides support, resources, and programs that increase access to all aspects of higher education for our American Indian students, staff, faculty, and community members. And so now I'd like to welcome Tad Johnson, who is the University of Minnesota's first Senior Director of American Indian Tribal Nations Relations. In this role, he serves as the liaison between the entire University of Minnesota system and the regional tribal nations. He is also a professor at UMD. Joseph Balkemper and Becky Webster are also with us. They are both associate professors of American Indian Studies at the University of Minnesota Duluth. Welcome, and I turn it over to Becky.
All right, so goli swagweg, kanyate lu niunget sungwehwene, Becky Webster niunget o slunige, wagwaho ni wagit talode, oniote aga ni wagada huwanjot, dulunkawane ni wagenyu. So in English, what I just said is greetings, everybody. My name is Kanyate Gale, which means snow scattered here and there. My English name is Becky Webster. I'm Wolf Clan, I'm Oneida, and I grew up near Duck Creek that runs through the Oneida Reservation. As mentioned, I'm a professor in the Department of American Indian Studies. And my colleague and I, Joseph, we had quite the adventure deciding to go ahead and embark on this handbook writing process. And we were able to convince a bunch of folks to go along with us and contribute it to us. And we're really excited to be at this point, especially in the writing process where we can gather to talk about its upcoming release, meaning it's real and it's almost here. And the beautiful cover art created by my friend and fellow Oneida citizen, Jessica Paulus. So we're going to hear from those individuals that helped contribute to the handbook and a bit about our process and how we all pulled it together and prepared to get ready to share it with everyone. So it's getting real and it's getting pretty exciting. And we'll also hear about some of our programs that we're going to be offering as well. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Joseph, and he'll share the next steps.
Yeah, thanks so much. Much gratitude, Becky, for enduring the partnership with me on this project. Really grateful to be a part of it. So as Dean Bochwe mentioned, I'm Joseph Bauer-Kemper, serve on the faculty at UMD in the Department of American Indian Studies, also as an affiliate faculty, happily at the Humphrey School. And like I said, I'm grateful to Becky for enduring the partnership with me on co-editing this project, and to all of our contributors for working so hard on it. I'm a settler person. I live in Duluth by virtue of the 1854 treaty. There's a lot of complexity to that. And that's where I am and some of what I do. Today, we're going to offer a bunch of introductions and a bunch of acknowledgements, really, is what we're getting to. That's about as far as we'll get today. We're going to introduce some of the background of the book, some of what it's up to, introduce several contributors, and articulate our gratitude to various folks and entities that made it possible. Of course, we have much gratitude to the Humphrey School of Public Affairs, to Dean Bochwe, to Associate Dean Catherine Squires, to Gail Fridland and Megan Pierluisi, who helped arrange this event. We're really pleased, as Dean Bochwe mentioned, we have a partnership, an emerging and still building partnership between the Humphrey School and our department up here in Duluth. We offer some applied programs in tribal governance, tribal resource stewardship that resonate quite a bit with the programming at Humphrey, and we're excited to be in partnership to offer workshop courses through the Humphrey School and to make courses, certificates, and whatnot available to Humphrey students. So you'll hear more about that in a moment. But we're really grateful for that relationship and the way that it continues to grow. Let me say a little bit about the handbook itself, and Becky will chime in here on a few of these matters as well. We're going to start with the why. Like, why does this handbook exist, or why will it soon exist, being released in July? And there are a few different answers to that question. One is due to curricular need. So, we run a master's in tribal resource and environmental stewardship, a master's in tribal administration and governance, an undergrad degree in tribal administration and governance. Our colleagues represented here among the contributors at the Evergreen State College have an MPA that focuses on Indigenous governance. And that program helped us create our MTAG program, served as mentors when our program emerged. And we share a lot of needs. We also engaged in conversation with folks from Northwest Indian College, folks from Turtle Mountain Tribal College, and other tribal colleges as well. And there's a deep need for curricular materials. And so that's one of the roots of how this project emerged. We've got these great programs based on tribal consultation, tribal needs, but we need materials, right, to develop the courses and to prepare the students to do the work on behalf of their Indigenous nations. And this handbook is hopefully a small but important contribution to that. Another direct reason is we heard from tribal administrators who said, look, we don't even have a bad handbook on tribal administration. Can we do something here? And folks said, we've got turnover, we have a lot of need, we have a lot of up and coming folks who we're really trying to build capacity within our communities to run our own nations. We need this as a resource that we can pull off the shelf and have handy. So that direct reference need from practitioners is another motivating factor, not only for tribal administrators and tribal governance program directors, but also from counterparts in settler governments, right? That's another audience or another population that we want to provide some traction to, folks who are working in federal, state, municipal, county government who interface with tribes. We want them to be better prepared to do that. And then, of course, there's no doubt an academic component of this, right? This book is going to make and is making significant scholarly contributions to the academic world all at the same time. So that's kind of the what or the why, if you will. So we've got this idea, we've built collaborations to try to pursue it, but that doesn't mean that it becomes real, right? There's the all-important how factor, and we want to definitely express our gratitude to the Bush Foundation, to Eileen Briggs, who really stepped up to make the process of conceiving, consulting, and putting this book together possible. So again, much gratitude, Pidamiado, to Eileen Briggs and the Bush Foundation. We were able to secure a planning grant, which brought several of the folks who you see as panelists today together, and an applied governance symposium. We had conversations about where the field of tribal administration, applied Indigenous governance is headed, where it's been, what contributions are needed. And this is where the idea of the Tribal Administration Handbook really got to be concrete, right? Some traction built toward that. And so we were able to do some initial research under this planning grant that I'll ask Becky again to say a few words about, both in relation to important topics that we need to address and in relation to material that's out there or that's conspicuously not out there.
Yes, so we started by, as Joseph mentioned, the need. When I came aboard, I was just an attorney for my tribe. I had worked there for 13 years, working on intergovernmental relationships and a variety of issues. And then I really wanted a career change. I wanted to find different ways for us to overcome some of these issues that not only my tribe, but other tribes are facing. And to be able to instill in our students these tools to be able to go back into their communities and have positive changes in their communities. So when I came aboard and I was looking at the materials that are available to be able to teach people about how we go about having best practices in tribal administration, there wasn't a whole lot out there. So as Joseph mentioned, we had gathered to talk about these issues and try to figure out how to build the field of tribal administration and governance. And one of the things that I did is I embarked on a literature review, which we combed through. I worked with a former MTAG grad to really look and see what's out there. And there was a lot of stuff out there about economic and energy development, sovereignty, natural resources. So all these categories that there is some good stuff out there. There wasn't always necessarily practical application of how you actually do those things. They're more theoretical and more academic. We found that understudied tribal laws themselves. How are tribes developing laws? And then again, the cultural match between the governments and traditions, meaning we want to own our own systems, not just necessarily something that we inherited. Looking at human resources and strategic management, also, there's not a whole lot out there. And then what we just really couldn't find out there, stuff about project management, operations management, and financing and budgeting, that really wasn't out there to the extent that it made a difference, or we really had a whole lot to choose from to be able to share with our students, or even for tribal governments to use to be able to try to find out what best practices are. So again, then we decided, we got together in our department to develop a survey to send to scholars and practitioners to say, hey, what are the areas that you guys think are really important for us? And they came back and kind of said everything, right? So I think that might be on your next one, but these are the rate that was rated by the importance. So of course, sovereignty and law are important, leadership and ethics. But what was interesting was there wasn't anything that people said wasn't important. So we tried to really cast a broad net to try to get all of these topics into this handbook, at least touch on them so that we can have something to share with our communities and our students to get a better idea of those best practices in tribal administration and governance.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Becky. I'll just note, if you're looking at this bar graph there at the bottom, just note that the y-axis starts at 3.9, right? So these are the top 10 things. Everything was really highly rated. We represented like this to show the differentials between them. But when we sent out this survey, right, it had options that sort of pre-filled topics that we knew were going to be of interest, but we also collected whatever topics folks thought of, recycled through everything, sent it back out. And so we have some pretty good data on where the priorities are, and these are the priority areas. So they all receive coverage in the handbook. And of course, that meant that we had to pull together a lot of voices and a lot of perspectives, right, to make this happen, because I certainly don't know much. Becky knows a lot, but not necessarily about everything. And so it really took a community to pull this together. A part of that community is our advisory group, some of which are represented here among the contributors that have joined us. So we're grateful to have pulled together an advisory group of Laura Bailu, who you'll meet in a moment, Wayne Ducheneau from the Native Governance Center, Amy Gold, you'll also meet in a moment, Anne Marie Hill, who has done work not only at the university, but through the Minnesota Indian Affairs Council, Red Lake Nation, her home nation as well, Tad, who's here with us, Lorna Legou, at the time from White Earth Tribal College, Paul Ninham also became a contributor, but a former tribal elected leader at Oneida, doing all kinds of interesting things, and Joan Tamiche from the Native Nation Institute. So we were able to pull this advisory group together to help continue the early visioning on the project and to work with us as it was developed and as we workshopped the various contributions. Which brings us back then, to the Bush Foundation. We had the planning grant to do the Applied Governance Symposium, and the Bush Foundation was generous and gracious enough to invest even further in the project to provide resources that we need to do the development of the book, to hold workshops with the contributors so they can give each other feedback, to get some external reviews on the chapters, to get further feedback, to cover some basic publishing expenses, putting together the index, working with Jessica Paulus to do the cover that we'll see again in a moment, and importantly, to help make the book available to tribes and to tribal practitioners at no cost. So the Bush Foundation is going to be paying for a bunch of copies, paper copies of the book, to make them available at no cost to tribal nations. And importantly, Michigan State University Press has agreed to make an electronic version of the book available at no cost to tribes and tribal practitioners within tribal government. Not to everybody out there, but I know many of you that have logged in will qualify for this. And so we're certainly grateful to Michigan State University Press for willing to provide a publishing home for this book. When we first got started, I called up Julie Lohr, who's a recently retired editor there at MSUP, who I knew because I'd done a few reviews for things she was considering publishing. And I just called her up for some advice, to say, hey, we're thinking of putting an edited collection together. How does this work as far as publishing? Do we need to get it all done? And then we come talk to publishers. What's the story? And she asked me some questions about the project and who was involved. And then she said, okay, here's how it works. And she told me how it works. And then she said, but Joseph, we want to publish this thing. And that was great. Like right off the bat, they had a great desire to do that and to do it in a good way. And like I said, to make it freely available to practitioners within tribes. And so we're publishing coming in July with Michigan State University Press under the Makwai Inuit imprint, which is an Indigenous Studies imprint that prioritizes Indigenous knowledge systems. And so we're really grateful not only to Julie Lohr, but to Catherine Cox, to Anastasia Wright, who's done so much work with us along the way, and to Gordon Henry, the Makwai Inuit series editor, for their support of the project and making it an actual reality. So there's the why, the how, and of course we've got the what, right? So here you see, if you've brought your binoculars, the table of contents for the handbook, several chapters, several voices, organized into 3 sections, right? Opening in tribal management, right? The nuts and bolts of getting things done in tribal government contexts. And so we'll hear from several of these contributors in a moment. A second section, on how to fund and deliver core services. And then a third section, because these intergovernmental relations are so prominent, on sovereign tribes engaging with settler governments. So that's how the handbook is organized. Each of the chapters follows a similar protocol. Right? They open up with a summary, a list of research-based best practices, and then they proceed into their case studies, the concepts, right? The content, the analyses, the skills building that each chapter is oriented to. And then chapters also include a practitioner perspective to make sure that the voices of folks doing this work are emphasized. And so that we have voices essentially saying, look, to up and coming folks, here's some wisdom that I've gained through my experience and expertise. And so each chapter is structured along these lines. The chapters are designed to be accessible and available and to stand alone, but also to contribute to the whole. And so that's what the project looks like. We're going to take a moment here to kind of do a quick roll call of the contributors that were able to join us today. And so in order to avoid as many awkward pauses, I'm just going to call on folks. And so we'll ask each of you, when called upon, to introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and tell us a very brief little bit about your particular contribution to the handbook. So I'll stop screen sharing for a moment so that we can see folks. And then I'll ask Laurel if you would go ahead and unmute and introduce yourself, say hello, tell us about yourself and your contribution to the book. That would be great. So Laurel Ballou, if you would.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Rebecca. It's been a pleasure to work on this project, and I welcome you all from the Lakhtamish territory, which is known as the Lummi Reservation. And my English name is Laurel Bellew. I have two traditional names. My Lummi name is Sesyahamia, which means she cares for. And I carry my late father's name, Sikutsbatsu. And I am a Swinomish tribal member living on the Lummi Reservation. I currently work at Western Washington University as tribal liaison. And before that, I think when I started working on this book, I was with Northwest Indian College as department chair for the Tribal Governance and Business Management program. And my chapter is on leadership and ethics in higher education. And it's, I wrote about my own personal journey as I moved into academics using Northwest Indian College as a case study. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Laurel. It's such a wonderful pleasure, and we're humbled to have you amongst the advisory group and a contributor, and to have been part of this story from the get-go when we all got together in St. Louis Park many years ago. So thank you so much for being here with us and for the wonderful work that you do. All right, we'll continue on and we'll call upon Lois. Lois, please say hello and tell us a bit about what you're up to.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lois Stevens. I'm an enrolled member of the Oneida Nation here in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And I'm currently an assistant professor at UWGB in First Nation Studies. And I did the chapter on covering operations management, and it was something completely new. And thank you, Becky, for bringing me in and opening my eyes and to something different for myself. So my brother and I kind of collaborated on this chapter. He couldn't be here today because he's traveling, but he sends his well wishes. And we wanted to focus on the Great Law. And I want to thank my brother, even though he's not here, because I really beat him up in this article because he is our vice chairman. And I was really kind of going after our government structure on the Oneida Reservation. And so he kept his chin up through that process and helped me understand the political end of our conversation. But what we wrote about is just looking at our ancestral knowledge systems that are in our blood still, and how we can bring those knowledge systems to our government structure today. So bringing in the Great Law and those teachings, those original teachings that, like I said, are still in our blood, they're still in our systems, and we carry on those stories every day. So why aren't we practicing them in our government? So like I said, I kind of went after the government structure as it is, but we're not talking about those psychological biases that we feel in our decision-making processes. And we always get those answers of, this is the way we do things, and we've all done them this way, and I'm tired of those answers. So we're hoping that we can continue this conversation within our tribe.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And Lois, as you said, like something new to you, right? I mean, this is new to everyone. This is one of those topics that was not yet studied, right, in Becky's Lit Review, but one that was really important to folks. And so we're grateful to people like you who are willing to take this on and do that unprecedented work that's so needed. Well, thank you. All right, now we'll turn to another of our stalwarts throughout the process, Amy Gold from out west. Amy, if you would.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joseph and Becky, and good morning, Laurel and Lois. So good to see everyone here today. Laurel and I have known each other for over 17 years. Good morning, my friend. My name is Amy Gould, member of the faculty at the Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington, on the traditional homelands of the Salish Sea people. And again, been teaching there for many, many years in the first, and at one time, the only, master's in public administration in tribal governance. And I'm so ecstatic that now we are not alone. And basically, I got to collaborate with another alum of our program, Chairman Chris Peters, and we talked story. And what we talked story about was the authorizing environment within tribal public administration. That's a fancy way of saying, hey, guess what? We govern with grandma. And so when we govern with grandma, we need to remember relationality, reciprocity, and respect. We need to remember who we are governing with, who we are governing for, and where we are governing. And as a non-native ally and accomplice, I was able to work alongside Chairman Peters, and his stories really are the center and the focus of Chapter 3, Authorizing Environment. I want to acknowledge Tad just in closing, because I think the biggest stamp of approval for this handbook and for our contribution in Chapter 3 was that when in the very, very early drafts, Tad was part of the review process, and his only comment was, geez, I wish I'd known this stuff when I started out. And I don't think we could have asked for a better stamp of approval for all of this work. And Becky and Joseph, my hands go up to both of you. You have been at this, guiding us for over 4 years. Your dedicated determination and passion to this work is absolutely the heartbeat, the drumbeat that our feet followed, and cannot express enough gratitude to both of you.
Amy, thank you. Much gratitude. And of course, you've been here the entire way, so you would know, and you've been right there with us. So thank you so much for working on it and making it happen. We'll now turn over to Tony House, if you would say hello and tell us a bit about your work with us.
Sego swagwek, gaye no nihe ni yungyats, o kale wagwaho ni wagita lodang, o kale onayote ag, ni waguwahunjot. My English name is Tony House. I'm an associate professor at UW Oshkosh in human services leadership. I just want to thank everyone. Big yaw go to Becky and Joseph and all the people who have contributed on this journey that we've been taking. I know I had my heels in right from the get, and so I have to really thank Becky for really supporting me and pushing me. Myself, I worked alongside Joanne House, and we also wrote about the Great Law of Peace as participatory governance, but when the angle we came in from was looking at our ancient teachings to identify the leadership principles that are embedded in our ancient teachings. And that's kind of what fueled me, along with watching the lack of leadership that we often work in. And I think for me, not understanding governance as thoroughly as I could have been nurtured to, this process took me down that path to thinking, to seeing the importance of leadership, the importance of participatory leadership, and how profound our ancestors were in their thinking. It's just a beginning step. Writing this chapter for this handbook was a beginning step to an old path. And when I wrote it, what I really thought about was encouraging others to look at our ancient stories from a different paradigm, to try and see what's embedded in the storyline that we take for granted. And so, like, I'm constantly thinking, everyone, we want to know what our roles and responsibilities are as Haudenosaunee people. And if you, in one paragraph, they talk about the roles and responsibilities of women in our Haudenosaunee ways. And just to take that one little snippet and apply it to our daily life, and you think about the ethics and the leadership and the knowledge that we have to keep working towards as women, our roles and responsibilities are huge. And so that's kind of where I came from. I don't know if that's even a good synopsis of what we wrote about, but that's where I came from. And I wanted to encourage others where I wanted to encourage others to go. But again, if I haven't said thank you enough, I want to thank you everyone who has been a part of this journey. And it's exciting to hear. It's a little nerve-wracking, but it's real exciting to hear all your different contributions. Thank you. Yawanko.
All right, thank you, Tony. Really, really well said in your description of the chapter that you did and the resonance of it across so many levels. Wonderful. Michael, we'll turn to you now. Michael, say hello and tell us what you're up to over there at Turtle Mountain and about the chapter.
Hi, my name is Michael Patra. I'm an enrolled member of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Indians in Belcourt, North Dakota. We're in the beautiful Turtle Mountains. I'm currently an instructor, developer at the Turtle Mountain Community College in the Leadership and Management Bachelor's Program. I was also part of the CTAG. I'm not sure, I can't remember which year it was. It's been 2 years, just went a blur, but I think it was the last CTAG class, but unfortunately, because I have a lot of people still interested from Turtle Mountains up here. But yeah, so about the chapter, I kind of touched on many of the topics in the chapter, like tarot, Indian preference, the hiring process, recruitment, screening, selecting, training and retention, disciplinary actions, employment handbooks. One of the reasons why I picked, I wanted to write about human resources was because it's a big topic here in our tribal government. Many of we have a lot of issues, and I think Becky would know, like when I was resourcing, I was going back to Oneida Nation because they have a handbook, they have trainings, they have recruitment. I mean, they have the guide to go by, and that's something of that I wish our tribe would do. And it was kind of the good and the bad types of things, where I was going in. And I mean, we have a lot of good things with our tribe, but the hiring process, the HR, it would, this book and I think this guide would help with our tribal administration. And so that's part of my contribution, and it was a really good process. I found it really interesting, and I learned a lot actually also too. So it was fun. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, that HR topic, an incredibly important one, and we're one that we've heard time and again that folks feel underprepared even while stuff comes at them. So thank you so much for joining in on that. Becky, did you want to say a few words? You're a co-author on that chapter, a co-author on some other chapters as well. You're on the list of contributors. So Becky, do you want to tell us about your contributions to the collection?
Sure. So I think Michael did a really good summary of what our HR chapter is all about. Actually, a little funny story on that. So after I had left Oneida and joined the team at the Department of American Indian Studies, I said, all right, what classes am I teaching? And I got my list of classes, and I went back and I told my mom about what classes I'm teaching. And one of them was the master's class in human resources. And she says, you don't know anything about human resources? Like, wow, Mom, really? Thanks for your support for this. So, but when I dove into it, I really did have quite a bit of relationships in my work with Oneida with human resources. But like a lot of people mentioned, I really didn't know a whole lot. And this process of helping work on this chapter really even changed the way I teach my class too on human resources. So we found new things to bring into the classroom. And I'm hoping in the future we'll be able to use this chapter to kind of kick off that class to really get it rolling. The other chapter I co-wrote with actually my aunt, Julie Clark. She was I can't remember the name of her title, but a lot of her work was in training with Oneida, and she worked on Balanced Scorecard, which is a strategic planning process that Oneida had gone through. And we talked about strategic planning, and we went through that whole process and what it can look like. And like Joseph keeps saying, we wanted to really make it accessible, because a lot of this other, if you look at strategic management out there, strategic planning, they use these big giant words and it's really hard to understand. We wanted to make sure that somebody would be able to pick up this chapter and understand and demystify what was going on, or how you can go about engaging in strategic planning in your community, so that everyone could get on the same page and move forward in the same direction. So that was another chapter that I hope to, cite to or use in my future classes, because I think it provides a good introduction to this topic.
All right, great. Thank you, Becky. So we'll now jump over to Carrie to tell us about the work and the contribution in human services.
Sagoli, Poso, I'm Carrie Wabanascom. I'm an enrolled member of the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin, and I'm also a Menominee, Potawatomi, and Stockbridge Munsee. I am a recent graduate of the University of Minnesota Twin Cities and the School of Social Work. I earned my PhD in just last year in July. I work closely with Dr. Katie Johnston Goodstar, who's Dakota, and she is the lead author on our chapter looking at human services for Indigenous futures. And our another co-author is Donald Eubanks, who is a retired professor in social work as well. And so before going to get my PhD, I spent about 10 years working as a social worker in our tribal communities within northeastern Wisconsin, and then on a more macro level with tribal nations throughout the United States. And so I'm a current assistant professor at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay in social work. And I'm really enjoying being back home after being in Minnesota and Vikings territory for 5 years. It's nice to be back home. And Lois is right across the sidewalk from me. So Lois, we're going to hang out sometimes. But anyway, so our lens was coming at human services, and social work is very intertwined with human services, because social workers, that's mainly where we serve, is human services. So looking at child welfare, financial and emergency assistance, mental health, and other community services programs, we took a decolonial lens, meaning that we are identifying where colonization still exists in our human services, because ongoing colonization in some areas is hidden, and sometimes we are just unaware where it is. And so I really, even question myself sometimes as a social worker, was I contributing to this ongoing colonization to my own people? And many of us think that in this profession of social work. And because its roots are in colonization and as a part of a settler colonial project to assimilate our people. And so we were really looking at how human services continue to assimilate our people, and looking at from a decolonial lens, how can we, and through the case studies that we looked at, how are we, bringing back our knowledge, the knowledge that Tony talked about, that Becky does. As I see you, like I see people in our community. I'm new back here after 5 years, but I see you all. There's areas that we are reclaiming our ways. And so using that same framework, how are we reclaiming our ways within social work, within human services? Because when we look at the helping professions, that ongoing colonization is often hidden under that guise of helping. So that's what we are really calling out and looking at. And so our case studies, we really looked at programs that were really doing this work on the ground, because throughout my whole lifetime, I've seen how we in our communities, we are doing the work. We're doing that work. We're doing that decolonial work. And like I said, I'm continuing to do this in my field in social work and in human services. So thank you. I'd like to just thank Becky and Joseph and everybody else for welcoming me to this project. I came on a little late because Katie, Dr. Goodstar, she just like looped me in. She's like, Carrie, you got to come join me on this. It's in alignment with what you're doing. So I thank you for welcoming me and everybody for doing this super important work. And this is super exciting. Yawanko.
Great, thank you, Carrie, and you know, you've said it so well, what the chapter is, but I also want to underscore how the chapter resonates across the collection. You know, if you look at the table of contents, it's literally in the middle of the book, but metaphorically, it's at the core of the project itself. And there's a lot of great work done in that chapter, not only on settler colonialism, but on indigenous resurgence and nation rebuilding that you spoke to. That's so important. I also want to give a quick shout out to Don Eubanks, who I think I see among the attendees. Don, my apologies. We got you the wrong link, so you're not able to unmute and say hello, but we're really grateful for your work on the project and glad that you could join us today. Let's now go to Larry Roberts. Larry, say hello, tell us what you're up to and a bit about the chapter, if you would.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Larry Roberts. I'm a citizen of the Oneida Nation, and I am coming to you from the Mohegan Reservation, where I'm serving as the Attorney General for the Mohegan Indian Tribe. So my chapter is on federal budgets. I'm trying to spare as much of the audience as possible and having to work at the Department of the Interior. So I'm trying to download in this chapter everything that I learned at Interior during the Obama administration and a little bit from the Biden administration on the federal budgeting process. And so just, you know, in terms of the federal budgeting process itself, it can be really opaque. Depending on the time of year, there can be 3 budgets going on at any one particular time. And so this is, the chapter focuses on not only timing for addressing Department of Interior and other departments in terms of advancing tribal priorities through that budgeting process, but also looking at how to address what have been long-term budget shortfalls to make sure that the U.S. is you know, making strides to abide by its trust and treaty responsibilities. And so so in a nutshell, it is, you know, how to navigate that process, because although it can be opaque, it also doesn't the cadence of it doesn't change that much over time. So so that's a brief overview, and I just want to say thank you to Becky and Joseph and Tad for including me as part of your book. It's been a true honor to be part of it with you all and this group, and just say thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. It's of course an honor to have you amongst the team here, and this chapter is just eminently practical, lucid, clear. You know, all of the Humphrey students out there, even if your interests in tribal governance are only tangential, you got to pick this up and look at that chapter among others, because it really helps clarify what goes on over there in DC in relation to other governments and in relation to the trust obligations, as you said, Larry. So so really wonderful to have you on board, and that chapter is such a key. Much gratitude for it. Along somewhat of a similar vein, also in that same section on sovereign nations engaging in settler governments, Wendy Helgamo is with us. So Wendy, if you could unmute, say hello, and tell us a bit of the collaboration, and we'll come to Tad too, worked on the same chapter together.
Thank you, Joseph. Hello, everybody. It's good to see everybody. I also want to thank the team for inviting me to be a part of this process. It seems like a long time ago when we started that. It was over 2 years ago. We were at a retreat in Minneapolis. I got to come back to my hometown from Washington, D.C. and spend some time with everybody to see where we wanted to go with this handbook and what all should be included. So I was able to contribute to the federal policy pieces that we wanted to talk to tribes about and tribal officials, and the importance of knowing who your congressional delegation is and federal officials that tribes work with locally, on the regional level, and on the national level, like where Larry Roberts comes from. So we were able to kind of break down, as Becky said, demystify some of that process. And we want to, underscore the importance of these relationships as well, for folks in the federal government whose responsibility it is to keep the promises of the United States to tribes. The best ways to communicate with them, tell your story, and make sure that they're doing the things that they should be doing to serve tribes, and the special relationship that tribes have with this country. So, oh, I forgot to say, I'm a member of the Ho-Chunk Nation. I'm from Minnesota, so I was really happy to come home and see friends and to work on the project. One of my early parts of my career, I worked for the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe Indians as a young lawyer, really helping to, keep the government going, work in the tribal court system, work with the police department, things of that nature, work with the commissioners of the tribe. And at that time, the Mille Lacs Band was one of the first tribes to codify their statutes, and they went to Westlaw, and they had these books, these volumes of the band law that just sat on my bookshelf, and they were dog-eared and ragged from looking at the books. And I know Tad had a hand in all of that, in the development of all of that. But that kind of shows the intersection of the tribal governmental policy making, that the tribes do with the federal pieces. And so from there, I went to the halls of Congress and worked for Senator Harry Reid and worked on some legislation, also in a tribal nonprofit, the National American Indian Housing Council. And so part of what I wrote about was how to get federal laws to the president's desk, and the persistence that it takes, the education that tribes have to constantly do to federal officials, members of Congress, and also in building coalitions. So I hope that that's going to be helpful to everybody.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you for your work and for your joining us on this project and your important contributions to that chapter and the collection as a whole. It's really wonderful to have you on the team. Tad, we're going to come back to you in a moment to talk about some of the programs and things that Humphrey School folks are particularly interested in. But did you want to say anything about the chapter before we do that?
No, I think Wendy covered it pretty well. And Joseph and I do Zoom presentations. I'm very proud of Becky and Joseph. I'm very proud of this department. So chi miigwech to you guys.
Great. Thanks, Ted. So I believe that we've heard from the contributors that were able to be with us today. If I've missed someone, please call me out right now and embarrass me duly. Of course, there are so many contributors to the project that weren't able to make it. We're grateful to all those that are here, grateful to all those that weren't able to make it. Becky and I have just been humbled and awed to have stumbled into the roles as co-editors of this project. It wouldn't exist without our contributors, their communities, their connections, their knowledges. And I'm just so grateful and surprised every day that I've gotten to be part of this project. So much gratitude to all of our contributors for making it happen and for the important work that it's going to do. We've mentioned a couple times the cover. I wanted to put it back up here on the screen. So let me reactivate the screen share and we can see the cover from Jessica Paulus, as Becky mentioned. Jessica's of the Oneida Nation and put the cover together for us. We're grateful to Michigan State for allowing us to kind of dictate the cover here. Becky, did you want to say a little bit about the cover?
Well, the cover, the artwork is Jessica Paulus had created it. And it's entitled Celestial Growth. That's the name of her artwork. So what we have here is there's some line art that's that's pretty common in our cultural symbols. A lot of it appears in our beadwork on our clothing. So, and in the middle is the celestial tree, and that's all a part of our creation story and about how things came to be here on Earth as they were in Sky World. So I could talk on and on about it, and I'm a little sad Jessica's not here because you all should really hear from her about her love and passion that she puts into all of her artwork. And when we had the opportunity to decide what the cover is going to look like, I knew right away, early on, that we needed to get Jessica on board to draw something for our handbook because it would really embrace everything that we've been talking about, you know, the cultural match, returning to our stories, looking to our history to help us guide us into the future. So I think this book, the artwork that she prepared really pulls all of that together beautifully.
Well said. Thank you, Becky, and much gratitude to Jessica Powlis. Would encourage all of you to look into Jessica Powlis's work, and we're really grateful to have her on this project. So we've got a few minutes left here in the webinar. We'll shift gears somewhat. Ted, can you talk with us? We've got a lot of folks in the audience that are associated with the Humphrey School, students at the Humphrey School, and we want to make sure they're aware of some of the opportunities they have that come through the department up here in Duluth. So Tad, can you run through some of those?
I'd be delighted to. Thank you, Joseph. I also did want to mention we had Dr. Kristen Matoy Carlson on the chapter and Laura Painter, who was a Humphrey student, by the way. She took our MTAG classes. So the folks from Evergreen should know that Alan Parker came out and helped us advise us on creating the Master of Tribal Administration program, which is a 2-year master's degree. We're in cohort 10 right now. So it's been a while since Alan was here, but we went to consult with tribes. It's essentially, this book will work quite a bit into that program, but we note that we are interested in having Humphrey students in this program. We teach federal Indian law. Joseph teaches a great course called Principles of Tribal Sovereignty, which is the big overview. Also, everything that's in the book, human resources, et cetera, is in the MTAG program. So we'd love to get more Humphrey students there, and also other University of Minnesota students and folks from across the country. The second thing we did, and this was after 3 years of consultation with tribes, was a Master of Tribal Resource and Environmental Stewardship. And it focuses quite a bit on tribal ecological knowledge. So it's Western science mixed with tribal, the tribal view of the natural world. We also have undergraduate degrees, a traditional American Indian Studies bachelor's degree, where we have history, language, literature, all that. We have, after the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, I think we had one of the first American Indian Studies programs in the country. We do have a minor in American Indian Studies for undergrads. And then we've recently, we also have an undergraduate degree in Tribal Administration and Governance, which we would love to have other U of M students in. And also the new tuition policy at the University of Minnesota would allow transfer students if they're enrolled in a Minnesota tribe to get into any of these undergraduate programs, and they will get a scholarship and a ride through UMD. So we would hope that that will boost enrollment, but we're doing fine already. Graduate certificates, we just introduced, the regents approved them within the last year or so. So there's one in tribal sovereignty and federal Indian law. These are stackable certificates. So if you want to come in and take that and later pick up the master's degree, and you could also get the certificate in tribal administration and leadership. Basically, you've got most of MTAG covered. Similarly, indigenous environmental systems and resource management and tribal natural resource stewardship, economics, and law. Those are our 4 graduate certificates, and those can be taken by college graduates who are working on reservations and are seeking to gain information on those particular areas. So we're doing a lot of recruiting right now. So I'm always required to do this little advertisement for our program. So thank you, Joseph. And I think we're managing to finish on time.
Yeah, good work, Tad. Thank you. And I'll just note another one of our contributors who we weren't able to get on the panelist side of the webinar here. Apologies, Dr. Frizzell. So Linda Frizzell is a contributor and is with us as an attendee today, and notes that in the School of Public Health, where she serves on the faculty at University of Minnesota, they've got a grad minor as well as a certificate in American Indian Health and Wellness. So want to note that too. And we've got folks from all kinds of institutions, not just Amy Gould from Evergreen State, but all kinds of places with really great programs. I've put some links into the chat. I hope that everybody can see those. Amy, others, if you have links to your various programs that you want to put in the chat so folks can click through and learn more, do that. We only have a few minutes. There are some comments come into the chat, the questions that we've addressed, but if anyone has any questions that you want to put in through the Q&A tool here, that would be good, or any other comments, that'd be fine. And I see a hand up maybe from Laurel. Did you want to chime in here?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to chime in because Alan Parker's name was brought up. He was he recruited me to the MP at Evergreen. So I was one of his first cohorts. And I just want to state that we've come a long way with this handbook, because in Alan's classes, we were Xeroxing and stapling our curriculum for the weekend. Literally, there was no place to go for this handbook. And so I'm honored and excited to be part of this, because it's always been my aspiration, which is why I developed the program at Northwest Indian College, which was a model of Evergreens, to be able to develop scholars who can start writing this curriculum, so we don't have to Xerox and download and copy. So this is really exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Laurel. That's a really good point. We hope that not only this handbook serves the curriculum, but also helps to create the community that can do a better job, right, on the next time around.
We're the starters. They can come up behind us.
Right. Good. Well, we have some words of gratitude. Thank you so much in the Q&A. We're really grateful for our attendees, for the interest, for the support at the Humphrey School. Please reach out to any of us. We're easily accessible. You can find contact information for me and for Tad through the Humphrey listings of faculty. You can find contact information for all of us at our various institutions that we're affiliated with. So anyone out there have any questions, any interests, please reach out, let us know. We're really grateful for your time and attention today, and we hope to cross paths. And most importantly, we hope that this material will be useful to you all to improve tribal governance and the conditions and experiences of Indigenous people. So, Chimigwech, Piramiado, Gigawabman, Toksha Ake. We'll see you again soon. Thanks so much, everyone.
Nagiwa.